Committee to order. And present are Councilor Solms, Councilor Ingalls, still waiting on Councilor Malone, also Dennis Main with Avalonia, Mayor Allen, Finance Director Hancock, and Councilor Washington, and Paul Mogul, and Steve Holyfield, Emergency Services Director. So with that, I will ask for citizens' comments.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'd like to,
Go ahead.
if I may. Hi.
Sure.
I'd like to speak in favor of the, I hope you're going to vote this evening to support the Ledyard farmer tax exemptions for buildings and equipment.
Paul, would you just state your name and address for the record?
Paul Mogul, Mogul Sierra Vineyards, 827 Colonel Ledyard Highway in Ledyard, Connecticut. And I'm calling in to say hi and to say hopefully you all support the farmers' tax exemptions for both farmers and, excuse me, yes? It's on your agenda.
We're waiting. It's on the agenda, but we're waiting on finance.
I see.
On land use to
I thought this
take
was
some
finance.
additional action.
Okay.
No,
Well,
this is finance.
Yeah, land use sort of set it aside, and so there was no real, I thought, discussion on it. But I hope that you all could step forward and say yes, we support it, or at least do a finding on it, or some suggestion for land use to come to some positive resolution on these two exemptions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other citizens' comments? Hearing none, I have no informational items, and I would entertain a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes. I'm getting an echo.
Sure. Am I muted? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I'm here too now.
My word. Okay. So I move to approve the regular meeting minutes of the special joint meeting between admin and finance and land use from September 16th, 2020.
And I will second. This is Councilor Solms. And under any corrections?
I did not see any.
I didn't either. They look great. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Councilor Ingalls votes aye.
Councilor Malone votes
aye. Oh, hi, Tom.
Hi.
Tom Malone has just joined the meeting. And Councilor Solms votes yes, so the meeting or the motion for the minutes carries. Okay. Finance Director's report. Marcia, do you have anything for us?
Just an update on the audit. We are rolling along, and I expect that the audit will be done well ahead of the December 31st deadline. I'm cautiously optimistic that it may be the end of November. So it's been a smooth process this year.
Excellent. Happy to hear that. That's it? Okay, so let me get something out of the way here. Under old business, we have a motion to adopt the ordinance for property tax exemption. I'm not prepared to move on that because we're waiting for the Land Use Committee to have some discussion and possible action decisions on the Public Act 490, which states the minimum required acres to constitute a farm, which will have an impact on the town's tax liability for the exemptions associated with 490. So we're waiting on land use to make those determinations, and then that will come back to finance. So is there any other old business to come before the committee?
Bill, I just have a question. When is land use, when are they meeting again?
They meet the first Monday of the month.
So they're not going to revisit this until early November? Okay.
Roxanne is nodding her head. So I know we're not going to meet the November 1 deadline, but I would like to keep moving on this because I think we should make a decision.
I think so too. I would love to see this not get hung up month after month.
Right. Right. I don't like having old business left on the agenda month over month. I'll reach out to Kevin and ask him what his plans are.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Okay. Is there any other old business to come before the committee? Hearing none, I'll ask if there's a motion to amend the agenda under new business. Hearing none. First item is a discussion regarding Vitale Aquatic and Tennis, known as the VIII, at 14 Iron Street, Ledyard. And they have a letter dated March 10th requesting a 5-year tax abatement. In a nutshell, the VIII spent years putting their business together, applying for getting served by water, having to drill a well, going through all the permitting, putting up the, I forget, they call it the dome that goes over the swimming pool. It's a beautiful facility. It's used by many. We're happy to have it in town. And they have asked for a 5-year tax abatement due to the length of time it took them to build the facility, get it permitted. They had not previously asked for a tax abatement as a new business, and they're also looking for some relief from the COVID-19 crisis. So with that, I'll leave it open to the councilors for comments. One more thing, I'm sorry. I should also say that they went to the EDC with a letter on March 10th, and EDC, as we know, many commissions and committees weren't meeting, so the letter kind of bounced around and didn't go to anyone, and it was finally referred to the town council because the town council has the authority to make tax abatements. So comments.
So I have a couple of thoughts. One is if I were a business owner and I had reached out for help 6 or 7 months ago and essentially heard nothing, I would be extraordinarily frustrated. And that's an understatement.
Yep.
Second, I read that the former land use director advised to apply for an abatement after the business was open. And that, with all due respect, doesn't seem like normal protocol. Third, I would love to figure out what we can do to help this business.
Thank you.
That's it for now.
So,
Thank you.
I agree with everything that Andra said, and I guess what's surprising is it's October, and you're talking, since March. We as a municipality, this is the first I'm becoming aware of it. So, but I don't want to take the onus off the town. We as a have not really treated this business well because they, like you said, Bill, they went through a long and painful process to get this business going, and it was in the making for years, as I recall. So, we didn't treat them right. So with that said, I would like to help the business as well. However, the cautionary statement here is 5 years too long, or how many other new businesses like the vape shop or liquor store or whatever the next thing is going to be are going to say, well, you gave it to them, what about us? And there goes a lot of our revenue. That's the cautionary tale, but I agree with Andra. My family uses the facility. We love it. I was there for the grand opening. And I think it's a great business to have in town. And it actually helps out, the high school swim team and various other away swim teams. So I'm in support of helping them. I don't know what kind of Pandora's box we open if we say yes to that.
Thank you, Councilor Malone. So I have similar feelings. I know that they struggled for water. The town doesn't control the water situation, but it was a hardship for the business. I know that they had some permitting issues with the dome, but the town has publicly available regulations. We have staff who assist and advise and help guide through the process of permitting, but somehow that the permitting wasn't applied for correctly, and they managed to get it done anyway. We've talked before about the slippery slope for COVID, and I would not be inclined to support this business due to the hardships caused by COVID, because most businesses are affected by COVID, and that pandemic, as we have all said, is a slippery slope. So I would not support any kind of support on that basis. I do think it's odd, Councilor Ingalls, that our planner at the time suggested they apply for an abatement after the fact. That is abnormal. And if I were to support any kind of help for them, it would be on the basis of they built a new facility, they invested a lot of money, and normally towns, including Ledyard, offer tax abatements for economic development, and that didn't happen here. So I could support that, but them not asking for an abatement, I think is a problem. The fact that the town planner may have asked or advised them to ask for one is okay. It's a good idea, but they opened 5 years ago, and I seriously question whether he would have said, wait until you've been in business for a while and then apply. That's a stretch. So, but it's something I would like to do for them. They've had a hard road, and I'm more than sympathetic to their situation and delighted that they're here. That said, again, there's the precedent. What other businesses would then step forward and say, well, I opened here 5 years ago, where's my tax abatement? And how would we say no to those other businesses?
Right. So to be clear, they didn't open 5 years ago, right? Didn't they?
No.
Well, they started the process 5 years ago. Yeah, they opened this year.
Just to be clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
thank you.
Speaking in dollars and cents, what are we talking about revenue-wise?
The taxes are $15,000 a year, if I recall, from the documentation.
Well, that's not chump change.
No.
At least it isn't for me. I know in the big scheme of things, it might.
And we could do a fraction of that, Tom, and I'd love to do a fraction of that, but the real issue is the town's tax liability for every business that has opened recently and not asked for a tax abatement.
That is exactly my dilemma, because what we set this precedence, what do we have to lean back on to say, well, your business isn't as important to the town as that other business, and we don't have any ground to stand that, at least in my view. So maybe we could do something in a reduction, or like you said, a fraction, and just stand by for what comes down the road, if anything.
There is a difference between what VAT did and a business that's, for example, moving into an existing storefront. So, a business that's moving into an existing space wasn't required to drill a well and get permitting for these special structures. And I am very curious and frankly bothered by this detail about being advised to apply for an abatement after the fact. If we could get to the bottom of that, that might help me a little bit. And I don't know if there's a way to quantify you know, what could have been worked out if this discussion had been had at the time they were applying for all of the permits. So I don't know if that's something that Liz could speak to, although she wasn't the planner at the time, or if the mayor could speak to.
So I can tell you, Andra, that the normal course of action would be at the time that you contract on a property, you would request abatements at that point. And one of our more recent examples was Village Market. And when Village Market was constructed, they did seek tax abatements. And they did secure them, as did the buyer of the former Ledyard Center School. He requested a 2-year tax abatement, and that is up in July of 2021. But that was negotiated at the front end as opposed to after the fact. So I will definitely be doing some research tomorrow to see if I can better understand if it's written anywhere, the concept of applying after the fact. I'm shocked to hear that that might have even been considered advice at that time. So I will look into that too.
Mayor, if you can find any evidence in writing that the town planner advised them to apply after the fact, I would love to see that.
Absolutely.
I have a question,
Okay.
Mary McGrattan. I have a question, Bill.
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, since we do give tax abatements for businesses, we should have a list of criteria that we could fall back on so we would know and yay or nay. And I don't know that we have it. We kind of do it on and I know that's the only way you can, case by case, but at least if we had something in writing, something that the town agreed upon. So, but when somebody approached us, we could say yay or nay based on this criteria.
I think you might find that in the plan of conservation and development, the kind of businesses we want to attract. We had a list of those types of business specifically in the town center plan. And you know, you're right, you can't list them all, and they are absolutely defined case by case.
One more really important criteria to add to that is the number of jobs created or brought to the area. So a business may come in, but if that business is coming with 50 or 80 employees, whatever that range of employees is, would probably be a pretty important quantifier for a tax abatement too.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. We've got a long agenda. Let's wait and see if the mayor can find any evidence of any suggestion by the former planner or any conversations or anything supporting that. And then we'll come back to this in 2 weeks. Okay. Let's go to the next item, and I would approve a motion, or I would ask for a motion.
I make a motion to recommend to the town council appropriate $1,065 to account 010-205-51-53645 Gales Ferry Firefighting Training from State ACH payment of August 26th for firefighter training that was originally scheduled for fiscal year but was canceled due to COVID-19.
Councilor Ingalls seconds.
Thank you. This is pretty self-explanatory. I see that Steve Holyfield is here, and I would ask Steve if you would like to add any comments prior to us coming to a vote on this.
No, I think it's pretty evident what happened. We had a couple firefighters that wanted to take a couple of classes prior to the COVID-19. They registered. We did pay the state of Connecticut through the Connecticut Fire Commission, Prevention Commission, also known as the Fire Academy. And those classes were ultimately canceled due to COVID. And then the refund came, well after the fiscal year was closing. So we're just looking to have that money credited to this year's for the firefighter training. The desire is still there for everybody to take the trainings, but obviously we know everything kind of had a wrinkle in it with COVID as far as availability for classes and for our members to get those trainings.
Very good. Any discussion, comments from counselors? All in favor, please say aye.
Counselor Ingalls votes aye.
Counselor Malone votes aye.
As does Counselor Songs, motion passes. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Good night, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Let's move to the next motion.
I make a motion to grant a bid waiver to CGIS Mapping LLC to update the town's geographic information systems, GIS data, in accordance with ordinance number 200-001 and ordinance for purchasing.
Stop.
Is there a second?
Counselor Malone seconds.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so this is an interesting one. It's been 2016, since 2016, last time GIS was updated. And we suddenly find ourselves at the point where the cost has gone from $5,000 to $11,000. And there's a recommendation to approve a bid waiver so that we can continue to use the consultant that was recommended by the vendor. I don't see any sense of urgency to do this tonight. I'm not convinced by the argument that it would be a lot of time to update 75 maps and go look for another bid. This just fails the test for a bid waiver, in my opinion. It's not time constrained. We do have a choice of vendors. There's really no other reason not to go out to bid for this. And the price has gone from $5,000 to $11,000. I read through the scope of work. It looks like a lot, but I don't see why we wouldn't go out and get 3 bids to do this work. There are plenty of companies out there that can do it. We were referred to this company. It's not like we've always used them, as far as I know. So I think it would be in the best interest of the taxpayers to put this out to bid. Those are my thoughts.
So, Bill, I would agree with that. I am just, who, for lack of a better term, who didn't do their due diligence, and how did it get on the agenda as a bid waiver?
Well, I'd like to ask the town planner, but Liz sent me an email. I sent us an email at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. I was out of state. I read it today, and she said I won't be able to attend due to a prior commitment. So I'd rather have her come and explain to us what the sense of urgency is and why we have to use this vendor. Nothing against the vendor. I just want more information.
Right. And I think we're all nodding our head to that.
Yep.
Okay.
In the meantime,
So
she may be able to get 3 quotes.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah. Okay. So I would accept a motion to table.
So moved.
Seconded by Counselor Malone.
All in favor of tabling?
Counselor Ingalls votes aye to table.
Counselor Malone votes aye to table.
Psalms votes aye to table. Thank you very much. Motion is tabled. Okay, next motion, please.
Is that me? Motion 4? Ooh,
Yes, sir.
Yep.
a 2-pager. Okay. I make a motion to recommend the town council approve the following land use fees. Appendix ordinance number 300-008, an ordinance establishing planning and zoning fees for subdivision, new construction, alteration, change of use, and zoning permit applications in the town of Ledyard as contained in the draft dated 29 September 2020. Appendix A, ordinance 300-013, ordinance establishing inland and wetland watercourses commission and providing for a fee structure for applications as contained in draft dated September 29, 2020. Appendix ordinance 300-011, an ordinance providing for the term of office and method of election or appointment for zoning board of appeals and establishing a fee schedule for the town of Ledyard as contained in the draft dated September 29, 2020. In addition, recommend the town council acknowledge revisions to appendix ordinance number 300-003, town of Ledyard permit fee and inspection fee schedule for building as presented in the draft dated September 29, 2020. That is all.
Counselor Ingalls seconds.
Thank you. So the commissions recommend the new fees. We had asked them to do that because fee structures should be updated periodically to be in keeping with surrounding towns. We want to make sure we don't miss revenue that the town should be getting. We also don't want to price our fees out of line with the other towns. But I see that Councilor Washington is here, and I would like to talk specifically about the inland wetland and water courses, because some of those fees actually went down. And I'm curious if Councilor Washington happens to know why they went down. Is that because other towns are lower than us, or was there another reason?
And if Paul Mogul can stop me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was when they went through to figure out the fee structures, they actually looked at the other towns. So they did their due diligence there, but they also looked at it from the perspective of what the town's costs were. So if the town's cost for, say, publication of something was $150, and they set it to that cost. So all it was really doing was recovering costs that was actually out of pocket. It wasn't. Okay. It wasn't the case. So they did look at that. They didn't want to price it out so it was more expensive than surrounding towns. They wanted it to be reasonable, and they also wanted to be reflective of some of the work that's being done. So if someone was bringing something in that was going to take very little effort by the inland wetland officer, they didn't want to have any kind of real large cost to that. So it was really about trying to set the fee structure so it covered the out-of-pocket cost. And they took it as the cost for the services or the personnel themselves was a cost that was already being borne by the town. And so they weren't looking to recover those costs for the most part. Paul, okay. Mr. Mogul was there.
Yes.
The commission. Would that be a good representation?
Excellent representation. Very accurate. Thank you. We didn't want to increase the cost over with the cost of the town, but we didn't want to cost the town any additional cost. It sounds strange, but the truth is we want to keep our fees at a minimum, yet have the city not go into debt to support the activity. So again, thank you, Michael. Is very well articulated.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you both. Councilor Ingalls, Councilor Malone, any thoughts?
I just want to thank everybody who developed that with that in mind, as Councilor Washington said, as well as Mr. Mogul. You know, this is the cost of doing business, but we're not going to make a lot of money off of it. It's not an income generator. It's just to support the different permitting and zoning fees in the town. And I appreciate that because, you know, everybody's got to draw a permit to put an addition on their house or fix a plumbing problem or whatever. So that's, you know, that's saying something for the town, how we care for our people. And I that.
Yep.
Okay. Councilor Washington.
I don't know if this is appropriate time, but last night at the land use meeting, we did move the inland wetland forward. I should say that would have been today's Wednesday. Yeah, Tuesday, Monday. Sorry, days are kind of messed up. But there was last night's meeting with the Inland Wetland Commission. What was forwarded off to the land use, they did change one word, and I don't know if that is that going to be an issue in their document they forwarded to the land use. They actually approved the document with one word change again. You follow me?
I think we did get that, correct, Roxanne?
Okay, so that's resolved.
Roxanne's nodding her head. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a comment about charging only for costs, out-of-pocket costs. My view on fees for town services is that those fees should be reflective of a competitive market. Because if other towns are charging higher fees than we are, even though we've estimated our fees based on what we think are our true costs, the town has overhead. And more importantly, every dollar that we don't collect in fee revenue and other sources comes out of every taxpayer's pocket. So lowering the fees is, in my mind, actually a slight tax increase for the residents because there's less revenue coming from direct users of the service. Therefore, all the taxpayers have to cover that. And I'll give you an example or an analogy. If the WPCA, which is not supposed to make money or lose money, decides to give anyone a credit on their water bill, that money comes out of all the other water customers' pockets because the net has to be zero. In the case of the town, whatever we can't collect in revenue from the state, the federal government, grants and fees and other sources, user fees, that comes out of the taxpayer's pocket. So personally, I'm not inclined to approve a reduction in fees if those fees don't match surrounding towns.
I couldn't tell you, Councilor Soms, I couldn't tell you with any certainty if we're perfectly in line with all the other fees. I have to leave that to Mr. Mogul. I have to come back and look at that. Paul, could you speak on that?
I believe we are, and just a little bit above the cost to the town. And on some issues, we are in line with other towns. But a few of them where they're reoccurring costs, we put them at the minimum. So there's a mixture in there. It's not a clear line one way or the other.
Okay. All right. Well, I've said my piece. Councilors, are you ready to vote?
I have a quick question. What would be a reoccurring fee? These aren't one-time permits. What's a reoccurring fee?
No, not a reoccurring fee, a reoccurring activity. Let's say you're going to go and you've got an activity to, you had build a deck, and you brought the wetlands folks out there, and they said, fine, you've got a building permit, you got this. It's basically a second or third viewing of the same situation, or a shed or something like this that may be in a certain distance to a wetland that may need a viewing by the officer, something along that lines. Where you've already had a permit, you had to have someone come out and review it again, and that was what we were thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Councilor Ingalls votes aye. Tom, you're on mute.
Tom, you're mute.
Councilor Malone votes aye.
Thank you. And Councilor Soms votes aye. The motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next item.
I make a motion to recommend the town council appropriate $9,223.07 from State of Connecticut election grants in support of the 2020 general election to account 101-10311-55555 town clerk COVID-19 upon arrival of the funds.
Councilor Malone seconds.
Thank you. And this is certainly a sign of the times. Mayor, anything to add to this, or Finance Director Hancock?
Yeah, I can tell you that both the registrars and the town clerk's office right now are incredibly busy, and the number of ballots and the traffic that is streaming up there is amazing. So they have a number of items, including additional staff that they are looking for. And according to Secretary of State Merrill, there is funding available to reimburse the towns for those types of activities. So they're ramping up ahead of the the election. I think it's a very smart move.
Yep, agreed.
I would just add that as it says in the motion, the money has not arrived yet. They have received, the town has received a small amount of money from as support for the primary election, and I believe the letter she received, that the town clerk received from the Secretary of the State, indicates that we will be receiving more, but obviously if you approve this, it won't be appropriated until we actually get the funds in hand.
Yep. Okay. Comments, councilors? All in favor, please say aye.
Counselor Ingalls votes aye.
Councilor Malone votes aye.
Councilor Malone, or Councilor May votes aye. Thank you very much. The motion passes. Next item, please.
What are we on, 6?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I make a motion to grant a tax abatement to Avalonia Land Conservancy, a nonprofit land conservation organization, for the Atkinson property and the Durham property in accordance with CGS 12-81 DD.
Counselor Ingalls seconds.
Thank you. So Dennis Main is here representing Avalonia, and this is property that, as we all know, they have successfully acquired with a little bit of help from the town and a lot of help from big donors. And we are excited to have more open space, land set aside and preserved in perpetuity. And as a result of that, the land is taxed differently. So this is another way we support open space, because it is Avalonia is a nonprofit. So Dennis or Mayor, if you would like to add comments, please speak.
Dennis, if you would, take it away.
Well, thank you very much for the support. Obviously, this is you never know when you're going to close on a property, and because you hit in the middle of a tax year, this is sort of an unexpected burden. It would be in addition to the fundraising. So we certainly appreciate the $60,000 that the town has helped on those multiple properties that we're acquiring. We certainly appreciate the assistance we got from Groton Public Utilities, the state of Connecticut, and all of the other participants, including a lot of local residents, to help with the fundraising. The property is very close to being open. We're in the midst of doing our first annual Great Trail Trek down at the property that we have in North Stonington, Griswold, and Preston, 409 acres, between October 17th and 25th, that you're all welcome to come join us on. And hopefully next year in Ledyard, we'll feature one of the Ledyard properties as we get this property opened up. For our second annual trail trek. This connects to almost 10 miles of trails, so it's an awesome property. I think the town obviously is a great partner in that, with the Nathan Lester Homestead, et cetera. So again, we're very appreciative of the assistance with this tax abatement. It is consistent with the similar support that we get from other towns. Each town, obviously, charter towns versus non-charter towns have a little different statutory process of how they do that. So we're certainly appreciative of your taking this action on this one.
Thank you, Dennis. This was a tremendous amount of work for Avalonia, and one of the members in particular. These things don't just happen overnight. It was a huge, rigorous grant application process and fundraising. It's preserving and protecting a watershed that feeds the reservoir for the water we drink. And as Dennis mentioned, it abuts the Nathan Lester House. It's just an all-around great opportunity for everyone. So, any other comments?
Just one really quick, Bill. I'm trying to put my hands on it quick, but you may recall the cost associated with each acre of open space in terms of governmental costs required to maintain it. The open space designation is like the single lowest cost to the taxpayer. So when we are giving up a little bit in taxes here, in fact, it's a huge gain for us as a town overall.
Yeah. The last I looked, Mayor, for every dollar of residential property taxed, the property demands $1.30 in services. And that's a number that you can find that. I Googled it several years ago. There are many studies that all come out with the same numbers. If you have a residential home, a 4-bedroom home that is, on average, it generates $1 in taxes and uses $1.30 in services. Business is about a break even, it's 1 for 1. And open space, if I recall correctly, I think it was 67 cents. So for every $1 in taxes, open space generates, because they do pay taxes, they use 67 cents worth of services. And they provide, as we've been talking, tremendous benefits to quality of life and everything else. So, everybody ready to vote? All in favor, please say aye.
Counselor Ingalls votes aye.
Councilor Malone votes aye.
Counselor Solomon votes aye. Thank you very much. The motion passes. Next item, please. Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate you coming.
I make a motion to recommend the town council approve one tax refund in the amount of $2,782.10. That exceeds $2,400 in accordance with tax collector departmental procedures.
Second.
Councilor Malone seconds.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, this one, as we've said many times in the past, it exceeds the $2,400. I'm looking at the form. I didn't look at it earlier. I was looking to see if there are any additional explanations provided. Payment was posted to the wrong account. That's the reason. And we have the signature and the printed name of the applicant. That's awesome. That was quick work, Mayor. Thank you. Okay. Any questions, comments? Hearing none. Ready to vote? If all in favor, please say aye.
Counselor Ingalls votes aye.
Councilor Malone votes aye.
And Councilor Solomon votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
I think it says discussion.
Oh, it's discussion. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. So just a refresher, there are several items here that we can take, attachments here that we can take a look at. The last we talked about public housing or senior housing, we had talked about giving them a one-time reduction in their pilot payments so that they could invest in refrigerators. It was a great deal. We're very happy with all the progress that the authority has made. And we talked about also precedents, like what would happen with, next year, the pilot is higher than other towns. And would they come back to us and say, this time we want to buy stoves? So with a concern for precedent, we said we would do the refrigerators as a one-time deal, but we would consider reducing their pilot payment. And a suggestion was made that maybe we could reduce the pilot payment, but take the difference and invest it in their capital account. So you will see that there are two documents. One is the pilot agreement for the housing authority. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the ordinance.
Yeah.
There's an ordinance, I think it's the first item on your agenda, and it says an ordinance establishing a housing authority and payment in lieu of taxes agreement. So the font that's blue is what's added. And Roxanne did some research for us, and under Connecticut General Statute, the town council can set the pilot at any level. But if we do that, we have to do it with a pilot agreement. So the addition is, I'll just read it, in accordance with, and it gives the statute, the property of an authority, any agency or instrumentality designated or appointed by an authority shall be exempt from all local and municipal taxes. Municipality may fix a sum that shall be payment in lieu of taxes, pilot, and paid to the town annually by the housing authority. Then it goes on to say that Kings Corner, Ledyard Housing Authority, Kings Corner may be abated. The abatement must be made by a pilot agreement between the town and the housing authority. And that pilot agreement is your second attachment here. So it can be amended from time to time, but if you go to the next attachment, the pilot agreement says that we will take as payment in lieu of taxes X dollars and X dollars to be allocated to the Ledyard Housing Authority short-term investment fund for capital improvement to maintain the Kings Corner Manor facility. So that way, in giving them a reduction in pilot, the difference in the dollars that they're saving would actually go back into their capital account so that they can continue to invest in the property. So that was the thinking in putting this ordinance together. I'll leave it at that and see if you guys, what you think about that.
Well, Bill, as we talked about last meeting, I think fiduciarily, the housing authority is in a lot better hands than they were. And I know that the management has been an issue in the past. So we did this with Board of Ed some years ago, where we decided to take monies that were in excess or take monies that were left over and put it in their capital account because they had not had a capital account before. So for every project, which, obviously Board of Ed is a completely different situation. It's a bigger situation by, 100 times. However, I think the policy of making, requiring is probably a better word, all of our agencies and in the town to have a SIP, and even if we just kind of force them to contribute to it through what we would normally give them or any excess left over, I think that is a great idea and I'm all for it. I do, though, as a caution, want to just say, again, if they come back next year with their hands out because they, like you said, want to buy stoves or whatever the case is, water pumps or dehumidifiers, we have to handle that on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I think we're saying we would say no, we reduce the rate that we're charging for pilot, and we're setting aside that money for you to use as you please, so you wouldn't have to come and we would not approve additional money. I think that's what we're saying.
Right. And I think it gives them a good idea of what they have in the bank to spend.
Yeah.
Moving forward for any capital projects or any, bigger improvements and or maintenance. So it gives them more control, and it gives us less control, and it gives us less of a surprise factor when they come up and say, hey, we want to do X.
There are three things we could do. One is keep their pilot as it is. They've asked that we reduce it. We could reduce it. And the third thing is we could reduce it and set the money aside for them. In the case of this housing authority, present management, I don't think we're forcing them. We don't have to force them. They've done so much on their own. But if management changed in the future and, things change, and at least there would be money set aside so that they could continually reinvest in the property for maintenance.
To me, it's like an insurance policy for all of us, for them as well as us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Councilor Ingalls, you're looking thoughtful.
So that's funny. So I'm taking it all in. Do I recall correctly that the current pilot rate is 10%? And
Yes,
is there a recommendation, if we were to reduce it, is there a recommendation?
Well, I have a suggestion. No recommendation was made that I know of, but I did do a little math, and the request that they made for the refrigerators took 36% of their pilot money and spent it on refrigerators. So they were basically asking for a 36% reduction in their pilot, and then that money would be used to buy refrigerators. So I was thinking perhaps we reduce their pilot by 33% and set 33% of their 11,000, whatever it is, dollars a year into the STIF account. So it's not as, I think I recall a 5% pilot fee from other housing authorities in the area.
So it varies. It goes anywhere from 4 to 10%, but I would caution you using percentages because the numbers of units and the gross rents and the town responsibilities for all of them vary. So as an example,
okay.
Stonington doesn't do a thing. They will not go through with the plow. No public works employee will set foot on the property. It is 100% hands off, and they have a very modest percentage. So I think one of the things that we need to pull together, we have information from Montville, Stonington, and Norwich now, but I want to be able to consolidate that data into an easier to read format for everybody, because I think that will be helpful in guiding what is a reasonable adjustment for this.
Yeah, great.
And then the
So
only
that would
other
be
thing I
good.
would just exercise caution on is the town of Ledyard technically does not have any connections to the housing authority. So they are overseen by the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. So when you talk about capital set-asides and stuff like that, that is not within our purview.
I have to agree with Mayor Fred. The state frowns on the town getting involved in the with housing authorities. So, I mean, if they set up their own, that's fine, you know, and you can recommend what to do. But I don't know that you could set up an account within the town's finances for the housing authority. It would have to be done by them under their purview.
Okay. So the language here, and maybe it's a play on words, but the language says a percentage will be allocated to the Ledyard Housing Authority Short-Term Investment Fund or their STIF account, which is not what we would call a capital account, but it's a capital account.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps this is really saying we're not reducing the pilot. It's just saying the pilot is what the pilot is, and X percent has to be allocated by the housing authority to their STIF.
Right, right.
So, but to Mary's point, that begs the question, do we even have the authority to require, to create that arrangement?
I think you can recommend to them to do that, and they would be open to that, you know.
So an ordinance is not the way to go here. It would be a recommendation.
I think so. I think so.
I think the cautionary statement here is we couldn't hold them to it. If they chose to use whatever was in their short-term account or whatever we're calling it for something that we didn't agree with per se, for whatever reason, we could not tell them, no, you can't use that. I think that's what it is. It boils down to their control ultimately of their own finances.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why we added the language to the ordinance establishing the housing authority, that there is an agreement. So we're not telling them they have to put the money in an account. They're agreeing that they will put the money in an account. So they could say, no, we don't want to do this. And then their pilot would be what it is. They could say, no, we want our pilot reduced, period. So I think it's kind of a gray area. Perhaps what we should do is let the mayor complete the research that they're doing with other towns and see if we really can do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Yes, please.
When I first started researching this, I thought the same thing that all of you thought. You know, housing authority comes under the state, and there's nothing that we could actually do there. And I had mentioned that to Bill, but then as I continued to research, and this is attached to the agenda, it's an OLR research report, and it gives a summary on property taxes on HUD-run housing. And I'll just read you the paragraph that talks about pilot. It says, housing authorities are required to make pilots for their moderate and low-income projects, elderly projects, and elderly congregate housing under CGS 8-71 and some other ones. And then it goes on to say that the pilot for low-income projects is set by the municipality with the approval of the DECD with a cap of 10%. So that was where my question was about the DECD, but then I was talking to somebody and I think that they said that was the housing authority. So then if you go on, it says optional tax abatement pilot provision. Under CGS 8-215, a municipality may adopt an ordinance abating all or part of the taxes on low and moderate income housing that would be otherwise taxable. The tax abatement must be made under a contract between the municipality and the owner of the housing, which must specify how the savings will be used. So that was what I based the language on. But as I said, I wasn't quite sure who the DECD is, if that's the housing authority or if that's the
It's the
state.
Department of Economic and Community Development. I don't know whether
so,
that name has changed, but that's what it was in the past.
Okay, so, maybe that's who the agreement needs to be with rather than the housing authority. I'm not sure, but, I just put it out there for you guys to talk about.
So we have a contact with the Connecticut Housing and Finance Authority, Rhonda, who oversees the project.
Yeah.
And I will make a call to Rhonda for clarifications on this. And Rhonda Caldwell is her name, and we've had multiple conversations about it when the housing authority was really struggling. So I'll pick up the phone with her tomorrow morning and see if I can have a conversation with her and get some additional clarification on how that would proceed.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I
Right.
think what Bill asked me to try and do was to, say, so for instance, say if we still said, all right, we're going to charge you still 10% for your pilot, just say, and but then, of that 10%, say 3% is going to be allocated to their STIF, where it's not a town account, it's just saying, we're going of the 10% or, is going to there, because the language says the savings should be indicated how the savings is going to be spent. So, we're saying the savings instead of 10%, we're going to charge you, say, 7%, and 3% is going to go to your STIF account. So that's how that savings is being spent. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all that's all I think Bill was asking me to try to do with the language. So it would be good if Rhonda could maybe help us try to accomplish that.
Okay, so let's leave it with the mayor. We'll see what Rhonda says, and we'll come back to this at our next meeting, and maybe we'll have a motion we can act on. Okay, last item on our agenda is a motion to approve the Finance Committee's meeting schedule for the 2021 calendar year. So I'll make the motion. Has anyone seen any?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. You see any dates there that are in conflict with holidays or other?
Roxanne usually goes through that with a fine-tooth comb.
She does.
Identifies any conflicts, proposes alternate dates, and makes sure that all runs smoothly on this little machine of ours.
Ready to vote?
Yes.
Oops. All in favor, say aye.
Counselor Ingalls votes aye.
Counselor Malone votes aye.
Counselor Psalms votes aye. Motion passes, and we are adjourned without objection at 6 p.m. Thank you all very much.
Excellent. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
See you soon.
Good
Good night.
night.
Good night, everyone.